It's been fascinating watching the change in rhetoric from Keir Starmer recently, especially when you consider how badly his premiership has gone thus far. Now, we all know why he's so unpopular: his response to the Southport stabbings, throwing people in jail for tweets, releasing actual violent criminals early, and taking the winter fuel payments from old people, especially when he's spending masses on international aid, net zero costs and asylum housing. Yet perhaps the most notable thing about Keir Starmer is how negative he's been, how robotic he is. Everything is cold, it's just left-wing liberal cliches carried out in a monotone fashion.
Could you please join me when I say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
None of this matched the mood of the country, and it led to a massive crash in his popularity rating. And it seems like around this time, someone has got in Keir Starmer's ear and said to him, if you don't clean up your act a bit, the populists are going to take you to the cleaners. Now, while the Tories don't have a leg to stand on with regards to immigration, and Nigel Farage seems to have abdicated the throne of the populist voice to ingratiate himself with the liberal mainstream, the populist position has been taken by Keir Starmer. First of all, he said that immigration under the Tories was an open border experiment and done on purpose. As I said at the time, this is the sort of rhetoric he would have wanted you arrested for a couple of months ago. And he's just delivered a speech today outlining his 6 targets, which are all completely rooted in populist messaging. We all know none of this is going to happen, but he's saying it to try and appeal to the masses. Now, he seems to be trying to cover his tracks in the speech itself by saying populism isn't the answer, despite engaging in populism himself and stating that those who are drawn to populism are feeding off real concerns.
Populism isn't the answer to Britain's challenges. Easy answers won't make our country strong. But nobody can deny that this kind of politics feeds off real concerns. In fact, that's the crux of the matter. People haven't become radical ideologues. We are still, in our values, a pragmatic nation. What people want from their politics, that hasn't changed. They want a stable economy. They want their country to be safe, their borders secure, more cash in their pockets, safer streets in their town, opportunities for their children.
This sort of speech could have easily been given by someone like Nigel Farage and no doubt been called racist by someone like Keir Starmer. Now, I made the point in a recent video that Starmer is doing this to outflank the right wing and to try and win back some favour with Heartland Britain. But in his next statement he goes full heritage Britain, which is a complete 180 from the cold-hearted globalist we once knew.
You walk around our country, you look at our infrastructure, and it is clear almost immediately that we have long freeloaded off the British genius of the past because we won't build a future.
Now, this doesn't sound so much like Farage-style rhetoric. This sounds more like traditionalist right-wing romantic rhetoric that someone like me would say. But why is he saying this? We can understand why he's going hard on immigration to outflank the Tories and reform, but when he starts talking about the genius of the British in the past, what is he referring to? It seems to me it's a tacit admission of something that's going on across Europe right now, and that's the sense of people feeling that they're losing their countries, they're losing touch with their own heritage. Now, you could read this as an attempt to coerce and contain the rising European sense of disenfranchisement that's normally called far-right by the liberal mainstream, although in reality it's not left, right or even populist, it's meta-political, it speaks to the heart and soul more than the mundanity of party politics. Or you could read it as an acceptance that this is the way that politics is headed in the UK and Europe. We've seen a massive surge to the right across Europe recently, and only yesterday the French centrist Prime Minister got toppled. The situation in France is an interesting one because it relates to what I speak about a lot on this channel. When you have a mass multicultural liberal democracy, it gets very hard to govern. The split between the left and the right gets increasingly large due to their completely different understandings of how reality works, Then you have the differing groups demanding special attention for ethnic and cultural grievances. Then you have the native populations who feel like they're losing their homeland, that they've been betrayed, that the mainstream hates them, and they start voting for the populist right parties. The mainstream liberal system then does everything it can to keep such parties out of power. The French have been quite successful in keeping the right-wing populists out, but the problem is that you end up running a government that has no democratic legitimacy and the majority of people don't like. Starmer's strategists must be aware of all of this, and it may well be behind his shift in rhetoric, yet they must also be aware that his 6 milestones are never going to happen. They're impossible under the liberalist system. Now, you could say this is just what politicians do. They lie for short-term popularity. But I think what we might be witnessing is the normalisation of Keir Starmer. What I mean is, when Starmer came in, I think most of us expected a mostly uneventful shift between one bank manager to another. But Starmer ended up being a globalist liberal tyrant and pushed things way too far. It seems like he's been reined in a bit, and now he's going to govern more like the Tories before him, make outlandish promises on things like the NHS and immigration, completely fail to deliver, but try and say the right things to please the right people at the right time. And you might say that that's not a great way to maintain power in the long run, but remember that people like Keir Starmer aren't really in power. I believe power truly functions in the modern West via the global economic elite and the cultural institutions that adhere to globalist liberalism in the individual countries. So the real aim here may well be to keep them happy and the public quiet. After all, the globalist power structure can destroy you a lot faster than Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch can. But I do believe we're starting to see the cracks in that very same system, and that explains the behaviour of your Macrons and Starmers at the moment as they strive to hold it together. But it's only when the liberalist system falls apart that something new can be reborn. I think that's going to be the way that things change rather than by the ballot box. As always, these are just my thoughts. Do let me know what you think down below, and do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.